The footage we're about to show is from the body-worn camera of a police officer in D.C.
Give up! Give up! Give up! Give up! Give up!
There were a lot of people around who were vocally upset to see this cop punching someone who was restrained by two other officers and pent up against a fence.
He admitted it. No, he admitted it. He said he wrong. So you wrong? So he wrong. He the one who punched him. No, he wrong. It's him.
What if we didn't have this footage? What if this officer didn't hit the on button for their camera before the interaction? What if the officer forgot to charge the camera the night before and the battery died? What if they just didn't feel like bringing their body-worn camera to work that day? At the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, the bare minimum we were asking for was for police to wear body-worn cameras so we at least had accountability in instances of police violence. In 2017, this headline ran on the front page, print and digital, for the New York Times. A policy lab linked to the mayor's office in D.C. sought to assess the effectiveness of police body-worn cameras, so they ran a very large randomized control trial. An extremely important facet of a good randomized control trial is having compliance. This means that folks in the control group didn't take the treatment, so if an officer was not assigned to wear a camera, he didn't wear a camera. And if you were in the treatment group, you received the treatment, meaning you actually had a police body-worn camera for your interactions with civilians, and it was charged and turned on. Because there was this law around the body-worn camera program that required they report on their use, I calculated the hours of use during the time of this study. Between January 2017 and June 2017, we have about 203,000 hours of footage, which breaks down to about 68 hours per officer. If you consider that they work a 40-hour work week, it seems suspiciously low to only have 2.5 hours of footage. Are they interacting with civilians for more than 2.5 hours per week? An oversight board in D.C. looked into this and determined that many officers failed to turn on their body-worn cameras as required during interactions. There were 227 internal investigations during the time of the study between January and June, and among those, the vast majority, 164, confirmed that the officers failed to turn on their cameras as required during interactions. The average minutes per interaction and number of videos per officer tells us next to nothing about actual compliance. An officer could turn their camera on for the first 2 minutes of an interaction, then turn it off, then have another interaction that's 20 minutes, and we would still have an average time per video of 11 minutes and 1 interaction per video. How can we expect to measure the impact of police body-worn cameras on policing behavior if they could use them at their discretion? They could choose which interactions they turned them on for, or even what days they were wearing them. The peer-reviewed version of this study included a key clarification about the precise findings. First, they noted the non-compliance, and then described that the study was not measuring the impact of wearing a police body-worn camera and having it turned on during interactions with civilians, but actually the effect of simply being assigned to wear a body-worn camera. And so the New York Times should probably correct the main takeaway from this study, because it very well might be the case that if a police officer is wearing a body-worn camera and it is turned on for every interaction, they might greatly reduce the officer's likelihood for using excessive force and engaging in police violence, but that's not what this study explored. The real finding of this study is that officers think that they can have accountability at their own discretion. They can decide whether or not to use these cameras, even when the public prefers they do.
I didn't feel comfortable reaching for my ID, and he got a bit aggressive with that and kept demanding it and kept saying I violated something, which I don't.
That was Abe Nokira, who was sitting in his car in front of his house in Georgia, explaining to a police sergeant, a supervisor, why Nokira felt uncomfortable a few minutes earlier in talking with another police officer. We're going to show you that first interaction in just a second, but Nokira is Palestinian American, and he said he had very clear reasons to be fearful of his interaction with police and not wanting to turn over his identification. And as it turns out, Nokira learns very quickly in talking with the sergeant that Nokira's fears about racial profiling and reasons to be angry at the police were justified. Watch.
Is there like a bazooka or flamethrower in the car?
Because I'm Arab.
Do you have a bazooka or flamethrower in your car? Oh, come on. And that was a police sergeant. And there's Nokira saying, look, I've been racial profiled before. And why would you ask that question? Is it because I'm Muslim? Because this is Ramadan? Because I'm a Muslim American? And the officer says, oh, no, that's not the reason. Well, what is the reason? Of course, this police officer thinks that somehow he's being funny by making a joke like this. It's not funny. It's insulting. And the fact of the matter is, this is a police sergeant. It wasn't the first officer that Nokaira encountered. This was the supervisor that he asked for, which he's entitled to ask for. And a supervisor should know better than to engage in such insulting, ridiculous rhetoric. In any case, here's the first interaction. And again, Nokaira was pulled over in front of his own house in Georgia. He said later it was because there was a family member inside that he didn't get along with, and he wanted for that family member to leave. So he's waiting in his car, sitting in his car, and here's the interaction with the first police officer. Watch.
That's about it.
All right. Do you have your ID on you?
I do. Did I commit a crime?
We're trying to figure out why you're out here, and we're trying to verify who you are, so that's why we're asking you for your ID.
I got you. Well, I didn't commit a crime, and I also live in this neighborhood, so...
We haven't verified that yet, so at this point, you're at a place at a time. We're trying to see why you're here. So, yes,
Okay.
you have to show us your ID.
Did I commit a crime again?
We've already been over this. Asking for your ID now.
Okay, can you call your sergeant over by chance?
Sure. In the meantime, give me your ID.
Yeah, I'll wait till your sergeant gets here. I feel more
36
comfortable.
24. Go ahead and start this way, please.
You can run my tag. It's actually shows I live here. I'm not
Yeah, I
trying to
got
be
you.
hard with y'all. I
No,
just
it
don't
shows
like...
us that a person that owns a truck lives here, if that's what's address.
All right, so tensions are rising with that police officer. He wants the identification. Nokaira does not want to provide ID. He wants to wait until there's a supervisor on the scene. According to the Georgia Legal Aid Society, legal aid organization, remember, you do not, even if you're the driver of a car that is pulled over, you do not have to answer any police officer's questions. You have the right to remain silent. However, you are obligated, if you're the driver, to provide your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. And if you fail to provide your ID, and police suspect that you've either been prowling or loitering, which is a bit subjective, they can then arrest you for failing to provide ID. However, if you're the passenger in a car, you are under no obligation to provide any sort of identification. Only the driver is. Likewise, if you're on the sidewalk and you see something, you do not have to provide an ID, except if police can give you a reasonable, articulable suspicion. In other words, articulate the crime they suspect you of committing. If they can't do that, they can still ask for an ID, but they can't require that you produce it. And a lot of Americans who just don't know the rights will simply say, okay, here's my ID, and police will ask them, and here it is. But the fact of the matter is police can ask, but you are not required to provide ID unless they can articulate that you have committed a crime, the exception being in Georgia, if you are actually the driver of a car that is pulled over. As for Abe Nokaira, he eventually was let go. Another officer arrived on the scene, said, okay, you're fine. You can move along. No worries. But clearly he had every reason to be fearful and angry about the racial profiling, which was illustrated by a police sergeant with that bazooka and flamethrower comment. Oh, man. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for joining us. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section.